The U.S. has become a dumping ground for everybody else's problems. They're sending us not the right people. It's coming from more than Mexico. It's coming from all over South and Latin America, and it's coming from the Middle East. When Mexico sends its people, they're sending people that have lots of problems. They're bringing drugs, rapists, crime, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're not sending their best.
Latinos here in this country that do agree that the immigration problem is a problem, and it does need to be addressed, and it does need to be fixed.
That's interesting.
But making those comments, those racist comments, do not help.
And if you kick every Latino out of this country, then who is going to be cleaning your toilet, Donald Trump? Who is going to be? Who?
My name is Ingrid Araya. I was born in Bolivia. I came to the United States when I was 6 years old. I have some memories of living in the main capital with my parents by myself. And then I have some memories of living with my grandparents in a different city. It was really countryside. I remember when my father left us to come to this country, he left me and my mother. And we couldn't live by ourselves in the city, so we moved to my grandma's house in the country. It was a little traumatic. It was happy because I got to be with my grandparents, my cousins, my uncles, my aunts. Everybody lived in one house. The traumatic part was that I was very attached to my father, and he just suddenly left, and I didn't know why. And the only way we could really communicate with my father was through cassettes, I remember. He would send cassettes of his voice recordings, and I would record songs for him and talk to him on the cassette, and we would mail that back and forth. So we only communicated maybe once a month. My father was here 2 years before he brought us. In those 2 years, I had gotten very attached to my grandfather and my grandmother. And all of a sudden, I was ripped away from them to have to come here. And I'll never forget saying goodbye to my grandma and my grandpa in the airport. And they literally had to rip me away from them and go in the airplane the whole time I was watching them. And then it was a very long plane ride to come here. So, yeah. I think because I came here so young, 5.5, 6 years old, it took about one summer for me to really learn enough English to communicate. And then by that September, I was enrolled in school. My first class was a bilingual Spanish, and that helped. So within a few months, I learned the language, not a problem. I think my parents were very, they raised me with a culture more American. Well, American and Bolivian. We celebrated a lot of things that they do in America, and we had some Bolivian roots.
Humans are always on the move. Migration is one such movement. It refers to how people move from one area to another. This can be permanent, temporary, or seasonal. It can be voluntary or forced. There are many reasons why people migrate. These are called push and pull factors. Pull factors are reasons why people move to an area, like work opportunities, good social services, safety and freedom of speech, and the climate. Push factors are reasons why people leave their homes, like lack of work and resources, war and political insecurity, crime and social unrest, or natural disasters like floods and earthquakes. Migrant workers are often seasonal. They go to find temporary jobs in agriculture or industry. All this means that people with different languages, cultures, and race are now mixed up in different parts of the world.
My father came to this country only by chance because he was very successful in Bolivia. He was a very good engineer, and at one point he had an amazing business that he had. But unfortunately, there was a crisis, economic crisis, and nobody can pay him. And he got desperate, and he went to Brazil, and we were thinking of moving to Brazil, and before he can even get started, the economic collapse there was really bad too, worse than Bolivia. So he literally looked around and said, I have X amount of savings on me. I have to do something. It's getting horrible in Bolivia. And he jumped to America because he had family members living here already in New York. But the part of Queens that we moved into was called Corona at the time. And that's where my father, his mother, and his brother had been renting an apartment. And I believe we were the second family in the entire neighborhood that was of Hispanic origin. The rest of them were American or European. I wouldn't say they were very welcoming, but they weren't exactly mean to us. It was a very nice, safe, clean neighborhood. And I have to make an observation, and it's just an observation, it's not my personal opinion. There was a big wave of immigration coming in Corona, Jackson Heights area. We went from being the only, or maybe the second family on the block of Hispanic descent to almost a whole block. Which is really shameful and a misrepresentation of our countries and our nationalities, that within a year of them moving in, the neighborhood became very dirty, very filthy. We had a kid get hit by a drunk driver. He was in a wheelchair for over a year. It wasn't safe anymore because the neighborhood got so ugly. And that was the word they used, they got ugly. And that's how we came to this part of Queens, and I've been here for maybe 20 years now. And that's not fair to say all people who migrate here in Latin American who come here are like that, but unfortunately, it's what a lot of other people see when migrants come here. When I moved here to this part of Queens in the 1990s, I remember I was going to junior high school, and this neighborhood was predominantly German-Italian also, but it was not the most welcoming experience. I do remember getting somewhat bullied, made fun of. I remember feeling very anxious to go to school, very nervous. I didn't want to. And I think it's because I was Hispanic and I didn't look like all the other little girls. And my mom dressed me differently from all the other little girls. And I gotta say, those 3 or 4 years that I was here were horrible, horrible. I was very sad, very upset to be here. I didn't want to be here. It was quite traumatic. I remember a few times I would get chased down, and I would have to like run for my life for like 4 or 5 blocks to get home, slam the door and hide, and then the kids would be banging on the door, and I would stay home alone till 5 o'clock because my parents worked. I remember there was a girl of Indian descent from Pakistan, and she had been going through the same thing. And then we found a boy who was Chinese, and he was going through something similar, and it kind of helped us like click together and stick together. And it helped us get through junior high school. Yeah, in other words, I would have probably not really been friends with them. They barely spoke English. I spoke English, but I just looked different. And I think that's what helped us bond, is that we had to stay together. Again, I think that's a social thing that's been happening. In the 80s, it was more welcoming towards immigrants, more accepting of other cultures. But I think that a lot of people saw the negative side of all that immigration, and by the 1990s, they disliked immigrants. They looked at them, oh, here they come to ruin the neighborhood. And I can tell you I experienced that in the 90s. They didn't want us there. By the time I hit high school, I went to a high school a little further from here, and it was a very mixed high school. So I think in that high school is where I flourished. I flourished and I got out of my shell, and I got over a lot of bad experiences that I had in junior high school. And I think the attitudes changed again. In the late 90s, it was so mixed. The neighborhoods got so mixed that there was good and bad of everything everywhere. And now as an adult, I haven't experienced anything at all. If anything, it's a good thing to be bilingual and bicultural. I've gotten a much better position because I'm bilingual Spanish licensed. So if anything, it's been very helpful having that now as an adult. But it's, it had its ups and downs. Here in New York, there's not a lot of Bolivians. In Virginia, there are, and I don't know any other states, really. but I know in Virginia there's a huge population of Bolivians. But here in New York, I gotta say, very, very rarely, actually, I've never run into another Bolivian that I can think of. In Virginia, I don't remember the names of the towns in Virginia, but there's a lot that have a lot of Bolivians in there with a lot of restaurants. I know they do a lot of parades with the Bolivian costumes. It's very, very nice over there. But over here in New York, there is none. I think in the entire state of New York, there's only one Bolivian restaurant. And it's not very good. To be honest with you, I was never really in touch with my Bolivian roots. I know about my country, I have family, I speak the language, but to be very honest with you, I never really felt that nationalism that other members of my family have. I don't know how to dance any cultural music. I've never dressed in an outfit from Bolivia. I don't know any of that. I would have to say my parents were never, even in Bolivia, my father and my mother, when they were younger and got older, they were never, I think the word is nationalistic. They were Bolivian, they were proud to be Bolivian, but that's as far as they got. So when they came here, they always said they were from Bolivia and they're Bolivian, but as far as sharing all those cultures, dances, music, and costumes, I never really was exposed to them. To be honest with you, I've only been to Bolivia twice in my life. So when I was 12, I went to the carnival, I visited my family, I got exposed a little bit to that. Came back, 10 years, nothing. Went back when I was 21, went to another carnival, saw my family again, came back, wasn't exposed to that. It's up to the parents to try to balance that and give your kids a sense of culture, where they're from. And depending on where you live, as a parent, that could be easier or harder. And then there's a whole other issue of people who grow up here like myself have a very slim chance of finding another Bolivian to marry. And my first marriage, I was married to a Hungarian American. So my children are really half Hungarian, half Bolivian. And how do you expose them to both their cultures? There's very few Hungarians here and very few Bolivians. So my kids pretty much grew up American. But I often tell them, when you meet somebody, what do you tell them you're from? And they always say, I'm American. Yeah, but if they ask you your background, oh, I tell them I'm Bolivian Hungarian, but half the time people don't even know where that is. If I have to be 100% honest, because you do, with yourself and with other people, I feel very comfortable at home. I mean, there you go, I just said it, America. I consider myself an American, and this is my home. That doesn't mean that I would never move to Bolivia. I visited this summer, it was beautiful, I had a great time. I would consider retiring there even. But I cannot honestly say I miss it and I want to move there now. I'm very comfortable where I am.
If you kick every Latino out of this country, then who is going to be cleaning your toilet, Donald Trump?
Oh, that's no.
In the sense that,
No.
You know what I mean? Like, when I'm saying that
There's more jobs to be
in LA.
I think the reason she said that, and a lot of people feel that way, is that it's become part of our culture that the majority of the people who perform those jobs are either immigrants or from a Hispanic descent. You have to be very careful what you say, and even sometimes when you're careful, you can say things that you didn't really mean to say it in that way, but it's been said, it's been recorded, you can't take it back. It's very difficult being in front of a camera, especially if you're a public figure.
The thing is, yeah, if I saw that clip just with the 10 seconds, I'd hate me too. Honestly, but I got cut off. I didn't get to finish what I was going to say, which turned the first half of it into a joke. But even if I told you what I was going to say, people wouldn't believe me anyway. It is what it is. I'm okay with people calling me whatever they want to call me. However, I'm not okay that I hurt people's feelings. And it was my poor choice of words, and it doesn't reflect my opinion at all. And I do not want to be brought into this political nightmare, and I don't quite understand how it got this big, considering like Rosie and I are really good friends. She felt bad because she knew that once she stepped to me I didn't get to finish my point, but I also knew that she's only protecting her community, which she should, and I didn't understand why she was apologizing, but I couldn't let her take the heat. So It came out of my mouth, I own it, and I will do whatever I have to do to make it right.
I will say this though, I do feel that immigrants who come to this country, no matter what country they're from, should assimilate to the American culture. I think at the very least, you owe that to the country that you're going to, the country that you're going to stay, the country that your children will be studying in, the country that you'll be buying your home and your car in, and all those things. You owe it to that country to at least learn to speak their language. You come to this country, yeah, you bring your roots with you, you bring your culture, but you also have to learn and appreciate the American culture because you're here now, you're living off this land. But I'm not in favor of deportation. You know, it's just come here and be respectful. If you want to be respected, right? Treat others how you want to be treated. I have to say that I would not change a thing. Because through all of my ups and downs, through everyone's ups and downs, you know, I'm happy where I am right now, and I wouldn't be here if certain steps in my destiny were not taken. As a parent, you have to really raise your kids to the best that you can, to have inner strength and the personality to stand up for themselves. By that, I don't mean raise bullies, but stand up to things like that, stand up for themselves. I think one of the things I had against me was being an only child. I had no older brothers, no older sisters. So I think that maybe parents should be aware of this when you're going to a new neighborhood or you're going to a different country, and really prepare your children to be strong and to stand up for each other, for themselves. I think that was one of my biggest weaknesses. I was too scared to stand up for myself, too scared to stand up to people, too scared to be proud of myself and be proud of my cultural background. And if anything, I hid it or I neglected it. I didn't talk about it or I lied about it when I was younger because of the negative consequences it would have. But I have to say it was a really tough 3 years, but like I said, when I went to high school, things changed. I got more mature, I got stronger, and I learned to stick up for myself and then be proud of who I am, be proud of my roots, and talk about it with pride, and it was okay, and it was accepted by everybody else. And I think that's what kids really want to do, is they want to be accepted for who they are and how they are. And that's difficult, no matter where you live. I guess what I've learned about being from two countries is really being open-minded. Open-minded to so many races and cultures. Learning to love and appreciate parts of both countries and seeing the flaws in both and learning from that. And trying to teach that to my kids. Don't teach them the bad, try to teach them the good from each. The advice I would give somebody moving to another country or another part of the country or another state or even another neighborhood is to talk with your children about the possibilities of, how can I explain it, the different situations that might arise when they move to a new place, different things that they might experience, good and bad, and really mentally prepare them for that. Talk to them every day. The best tool you can ever use, I think, is education, is educating people on what different things immigrants from different countries have contributed to the whole world, really. I could talk for hours on Donald Trump. I don't have a very good opinion about him. The only positive thing I can say about Donald Trump is that he does speak his mind and he does tell people his opinion as it is and how he sees things, not the reality of things, but at least how he sees it, he says it.
I'm an immigrant too.
Are you?
Yes, I am. I'm from England. I'm an immigrant too.
It's so nice to meet you.
So your point is to prove that we are not
We are not this. Society gives us this label right here, and this is not us. Thank you. Thank you.
We're all productive members of society, and that's how it should be everywhere.
I do not see you as a drug lord, rapist, or criminal. Que huevos, compa.
Gracias. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you.
I'm with you.
Hi. It's nice to meet you. What's your name?
A professional, a teacher, special educator, independent woman, very independent, a mother, Latina. That's how I define myself.